Frieren is a beautiful anime all about learning to live, but it's one of the rare few that focuses so much on the past. While an intrinsic part of her character is understanding just how long and unforgiving time truly is, it's also about reliving the adventures she once had, remembering things about her old party members, their favorite food, the good times they once shared, and the flowers they once wanted to show her but never got a chance to. She didn't truly understand the gravity of time for other races, so the entire show is, in a way, whispering a lullaby for them to come back home. She can't bring back the dead, but she can remember them as the one left still living, and, as we later see, perhaps she can even speak to them once again by reaching heaven. Damn, he reached it first. The anime takes a more relaxed pace with no real goal in mind until the 4th episode, which is in stark contrast to something like Mushoku Tensei, which it's a bit similar to, where that show had Rudy with smaller goals throughout its first 4 episodes, like growing into a perverted boy instead of a perverted baby, learning magic, moving past his trauma, and more. Frieren is more about introducing us to the world and its characters, watching 2 of them die over the first 2 episodes, and then watching Frieren try to not take life and the passage of time for granted. There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, as going about it in such a manner really allows for the characters to flesh themselves out in a shorter time frame than usual. Frieren herself is one where you'll understand that she's developing throughout, but when she repeats the same phrase of a mere 10-year journey at the end of episode 4, it becomes a powerful statement about how, rather than just a thing she did that barely took any of her time, this time it will become something she cherishes and properly experiences, which really hammers home just how much she's grown over so short a span, and that kind of delivery was only possible because of how the anime had progressed up until that point. It's in only 4 episodes that we're able to get such a good read on both Frieren and Fern, the 2 leads. Take, for example, how in this scene, despite being her apprentice, Fern voices to Frieren that she believes her to be obsessed with magic, where Frieren then insists that she's only somewhat interested in it, just like Fern herself. Such a brief insight into her thought process and how the old lady reacts by calling Frieren mature is enough to tell us several things. First, that Fern is still very much a child who can't really get a good read on her new caretaker and feels she should be helping more people, as Fern herself was a victim of war and thus she harbors feelings that it's the responsibility of those with power to use it justly. And at second, no one truly understands Frieren's mindset due to the key factor omnipresent throughout the anime: time. Frieren only appears to be obsessed with magic to Fern because of their ludicrous age difference. 5 years is akin to 5 weeks for an elf, so she only has a passing interest in learning strange spells because, to her, it doesn't feel like she's wasting much time, and her personality makes her naturally aimless and whimsical. She has no real goal other than meeting people and learning spells, and it's possible she won't gain one for another several human lifespans, as she only took up this hobby because Himmel complimented on her spell work and he was someone special to her. The anime portrays the differences of someone who can practically live forever and someone who views things through the lens of only having so much time to accomplish something very, very well. Likewise, the older woman who then calls Frieren mature in response isn't really correct either. She's still very much a goofy child, but in elf years. Her methodology comes from knowing she has plenty of time, and thus she perceives it differently to most people. The older woman uses that time difference, the fact that Frieren is over 1,000 years old, to equate her age to maturity, which is simply untrue. Experience, knowledge, and reflection are what make up maturity, but those things are never experienced if you spend decades wandering aimlessly on your lonesome. Despite having lived for so long, Frieren has only really had one moment of maturity thus far, and that was Himmel's funeral. His death caused her to reflect on the fact that she should experience new things and learn more about the people around her to fully enjoy life. And it's in that way that the show brings everything full circle and ties it all together. Oh, they definitely tied that knot together, alright. That said, Fern, like Frieren, has just as much revealed about her through relatively small scenes as well, such as showcasing both her trust in Frieren and, once again, Frieren's growth with the birthday celebration scene in episode 4, which in turn reveals even more about Christmas Tree herself later on when she feels that Frieren may not care for her despite buying her things for her birthday. Obviously that isn't the case, but Fern is the type to miss the forest for the trees as she tries too hard to understand Frieren but never makes any real connection. In the same way she felt the need to show corrupt priest her best and fulfill his wishes, something I can relate to personally, and thus focus hard to become a mage to prove herself to the one person who cared about her before he passed, yet the emotional connection and understanding of who he was as a person were missing because of her other priorities, and that has now extended to Frieren as well. However, that's the glue that binds the 2 of them together and makes them so similar, with their only real difference being Fern's cuter faces. I beat the fuck out of my dick. It's a testament to just how well written the characters are and how well paced the anime is that such simple scenes can reveal so much, and that's primarily because of how fantastic of an adaptation this is. It's able to make use of subtle visual and verbal storytelling through the usage of characters' body languages to portray their current emotions, like anytime Frieren feels smug after being praised, or through small tidbits of information that's subtly tied together as the episodes go on, such as one of the spells they learn in episode 2 being one that made grapes sour, later revealing that Aizen, her dwarf party member, likes sour grapes in a flashback to reveal why she bothered to learn it in the first place, and how she's sticking true to her word of making real connections with others and understanding more about them, with the cherry on top being that when she meets him again in episode 4, she uses a spell when they all eat grapes together. Things like that are littered throughout the episodes and really help to make the anime feel cohesive and elaborate without wasting time on it through direct dialogue. It's an excellent example of showing over telling, but the anime makes effective use of storytelling techniques that are unique to an animated format. The voice acting to accurately portray the characters' emotions, the sublime background art to make the world feel real yet fantastical, and even the music fitting perfectly for most of the scenes really helps to nail down the melancholic feel of its source material while still being its own separate thing rather than a pure one-to-one adaptation, something also shown in the way it opts to portray Frieren's goal of reliving the past while forging ahead towards the future by recounting her previous adventures. It serves to not only stay true to her character, but also to introduce her previous companions in a fun way, endearing them to the audience in small scenes by giving them fun little quirks, like Frieren constantly getting tricked by mimics. Oh, yeah. On the more technical side of things, the direction and animation are superb, as you'd expect from the same guy who directed Bocchi, the style of which you can see pop up intermittently throughout the episodes, even if he's working with a different core team, as they're still able to produce extremely fluid animation alongside several nice visual metaphors and cool laser beams. Pew pew pew! It becomes immediately apparent the second the first episode starts, but even more so as you keep watching, that this anime may not have had this particular visual style were it not for Mushoku Tensei coming first, as the staff and production overall seem to take heavy inspiration from the team over at Studio Bind with their film grain, character designs, effect animation, and especially their backgrounds, which is a-okay because the first season of Jobless is a visual treat and one of the best in the business of TV animated productions. It should thus come as no surprise that the music isn't slacking either. It fits the cinematic feel they're going for, and getting Evan Call, the guy who also composed Violet Evergarden, to handle the OST was a great choice. His music is nothing groundbreaking and tends to lean more towards a bombastic Hollywood feel, but it certainly fits the series and the mood appropriately, fitting almost every scene perfectly alongside the excellent sound design in the show. I mean, just listen to this firework. That almost made me shit myself. The OP and ED seem to be the most contentious point in the community, but they are far, far away from anything to criticize the show for. The opening bangs as expected from yoasobi, but I will admit that the chorus does scream battle shonen, thus calling for bombastic action scenes, the likes of which were seen in the trailer and fit the song perfectly, yet the opening visuals themselves opt to go for the more symbolic route while showcasing upcoming characters, leading to the song feeling a bit out of place despite fitting the first half of the opening perfectly. It certainly feels like an opening better understood through its lyrics that are singing about the general theme of the show, but at least the ending fits perfectly and looks visually stunning. It's true that yoasobi may not have been the best fit, but an anime ultimately exists to make money, and Frieren is no exception. Rather, it takes all the data from recent successes like the Eminence and Shadow and Oshinoko and throws it all into one big melting pot. What with the consecutive 2 core to keep people talking about the anime, which is in part how Eminence got noticed despite flying under the radar for most of its run, even though the production may run into issues later on due to the lack of a break. This is then furthered with the 2-hour episode, in Japan anyway, and the yoasobi opening, both taken straight from Oshinoko that was met with amazingly lucrative success. It's plain, simple, and effective marketing that I'm honestly okay with. It's something you could criticize the show for, but my issues, although relatively small, lie elsewhere. Something like the epic title card in the beginning moments of episode 1 with nothing really to warrant it, making the pacing and direction seem amateur despite being anything but. The scene called for a quiet and subdued track due to the loud celebration that follows in the next scene, but it goes for the exact opposite. There's also smaller things like the opening text not having narration, and that set text, in general, always shows up in the top right of the screen to indicate the passage of time and other important details, but is extremely easy to miss because of its placement. What the fuck's it doing up there? Furthermore, the flower scene in episode 2, while good, did feel a tad bit rushed between Himmel saying he'd like to show Frieren the flowers in the flashback and the anime revealing the flowers in the present day. For the best emotional impact, it would have greatly benefited from lingering between the 2 scenes for a few more seconds longer to allow the music to do its job, rather than cutting back so fast that it takes you out of the experience, something that also occurs from the severe lack of impact in any of the action scenes thus far. The anime opts to portray the fighting we've seen so far by spamming beams all over the screen, which either have their impact completely removed, like the scene with the dog monster in episode 1, or have a unique way of showcasing the impact, like in episode 3. The latter option is fine, but it's the former that leaves much to be desired, as do the fights themselves, as although the beams give the illusion of movement, no one is actually moving, and the beams that are defended against don't feel like they're even properly connecting with the shields, as there's no weighty sense of impact through strong sound effects. It's in stark contrast to Jobless Reincarnation, which it takes most of its inspiration from, where you could consistently feel the impact via the sound effects and the fact that it usually shows the impact itself, be it a hand-to-hand scene or Rudy firing off magic, is it always delivered rather than spamming pew-pew colorless laser beams everywhere that, most of the time, just feel like they're cutting corners. All the same, it's still a very well-produced show despite my few issues, and it lands solidly in the good category. Whether it's anything more than that is gonna come down to how you resonate with it personally, but that's okay. It's gonna have a different effect on everyone who watches it depending on their outlook on life and the things that they've seen, which is what makes it so special. It accomplishes leaving you with this melancholic bittersweetness of wanting to cherish life and does well at portraying the themes of inevitability with good direction, art, and animation behind it. While it may be slow and thoughtful in its presentation, it's all in service of portraying the genuine feeling of troubled souls learning how to live beyond journey's end.